Welcome, everybody, to Thru Sports with Adam and Paul. Today is Monday, July 13th, 2020. I want to start today's episode just by saying happy birthday to my mom. It's her birthday today, so happy birthday. I'm not going to give away her age because she would be embarrassed, so I won't do that. But happy birthday, Mom. And I know you're going to listen to this later. We have a very special guest, Adam Freeman, coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia. Paul Brees is in Brentwood, Tennessee. And coming to us from Hilton Head, South Carolina, is someone that if you grew up in Middle Tennessee or Western Kentucky, needs no introduction. First team All-State back in 85, played with Vanderbilt from 85 to 89. And Mr. Clutch, he's got a new book out that released back in August of 2019 called Buzzer Beaters and Memorial Magic. And let me introduce to you, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Barry Goheen. Barry, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me on.
We're doing great. We're combating this quarantine by just starting our own podcast. Is what we basically
really well. I did catch some of Friday nights, and I was impressed. You guys do a good job.
Well, I appreciate that. That's something that we do that's a little bit different. In the past, we've done a Friday night trivia on there, and then with that's kind of hard to get because it's hard to get, six people on at once to do.
Right.
That was a lot of fun. So we try to let that Friday night live be sort of driven by the listeners and the fans and everybody that has been kind of following us since the beginning. But, I've been reading the book. I got it yesterday, and, I got it out, and my wife was looking at me. She was like, because I don't get books. I mean, I don't read books unless it's like a medical trainer. I don't read unless it's like a medical textbook or something, journal or something. Right. So she's like, what? She goes, well, does it have pictures in it? And I was like, well, but that's okay. Because I started reading it, and it's just, I told you in the message the other day, it's just taking me back to that. It was such a great time in college basketball at that 85 to 89. But I want to start really kind of where it started with you in Marshall County.
Right.
Can you explain to our listeners really how Kentucky high school basketball is just a little bit more special?
I'll give it a shot. As I mentioned in the book, at one point, it's hard for a non-Kentuckian – it's hard for a Kentuckian to explain to a non-Kentuckian kind of the hold that basketball has on the state, west to east, east to west, north to south, high school, college, all levels. But I quoted something from Kentucky's longtime coach, Joe Hall, who's a Kentuckian, a native Kentuckian as well, as you probably know.
Yeah.
He said it very well, and I quoted it in the book. He said that, way back when, you're talking 70 or 80 or 90 or even longer back than that, years ago, teams, there were these little small schools. Now there's been a lot of consolidation, as you know.
Right. Oh, yeah.
We don't high school anymore. It's McCracken County. There's no North Marshall High School, which is where my parents played, or my dad played. My parents went. Marshall County, which is where I played. So made for big schools, but back in the day, there were these small schools, high schools. They were so small they couldn't really field a football team, and probably not even a baseball team. But you just needed 5 guys to play basketball, and that's really what happened. And it became a community rallying point for these small towns, these small communities, which really outside of Louisville and Lexington is what Kentucky's made of.
Oh, yeah.
They're very small towns, and I wouldn't say it's rural all the way, but they are very passionate about their local sports and their community activities, and really basketball is at the top of that list for most of them. And that really goes back to these where it was just a community type of event. You went to the basketball game. That's really the only big high school event that a lot of the schools had at the time. So that's all carried through now through all these consolidations in larger high schools, but it is still as packed as it's ever been.
Yeah. And again, interesting too, is that completely unlike Georgia and your membership and your involvement with the Atlanta Tip-Off Club, this to be true, the playoff format completely different.
No, it's a completely different.
It is I mean, you have in Georgia, you have what, 7 state champions on the men's side, 7 state champions on the women's side, not in Kentucky. And that makes
no, it's not. And I quote something in that as well. For a book in there, in the book, where someone says that the author that I quote says something to the effect of, they don't much care about fairness in Kentucky, which is true. That's meant as a compliment because, the small town schools can compete with the largest schools, and the schools in the coal mining areas or the far western part where you and I grew up, versus city schools. And my father's team won the state championship in '59. North Marshall, they beat Louisville DuPont Manual, which was one of the largest schools in the state at the time. I mean, that's how it is. There's no classifications, and I think Maine may be the only other state that actually does that. And Indiana broke with that several years ago. I thought that was a very sad moment.
Yeah.
Because that was kind of the Hoosiers. Now there's never going to be another Hoosiers because they've not classified.
Yeah. And, you talk about North Marshall. North Marshall, the last team from District 1 to win a Kentucky high school state championship, and that's 60-plus years ago. Your dad's team.
Yeah, 1959.
That was – I would imagine my dad went to Reedland High School. So, and he played ball at Reedland, and I would imagine they probably crossed paths at some point
there's a good chance they did
in their playing days. And in fact, he lived the first 6 months of his life in possum trot. Which which people that aren't from Kentucky, they're like, what is a possum trot? No, that's a place. It's not a thing.
Yeah. It practically straddles the line between McCracken and Marshall counties.
Yeah. So a lot of those things, but that run that you guys went on, you led the first group from Marshall County once they consolidated. It was the first state tournament appearance that they made after they consolidated and got to the Sweet 16, which, when we talk about Sweet 16 in Georgia, you basically you're winning one game and you're in the Sweet 16, or 2 games and you're
right. Totally. I never gotten my head around it.
Yeah, but in Kentucky, the Sweet 16 means the little team from Western Kentucky or the little team from the hills gets to travel and play at Rupp Arena.
It's everything.
It means it.
To a young man, to a young boy or a young girl.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, that may be
it's everything. And the Sweet 16 is just that. You say Sweet 16 in Kentucky, you're not talking about one of the final 16 teams in the NCAA tournament. If you are, you better specify that you are, because if you say Sweet 16 in Kentucky, they are automatically assuming you're talking about the state high school boys or girls tournament.
Yeah, and
simple as that.
And I want to say that you were talking about Aaron Beth, who's a Vanderbilt guy. His dad actually got inducted into the Marshall County Hall of Fame, Sports Hall of Fame, the same year you did, as his 2 state championships and multiple region titles. But I think this year, I want to say that they qualified, but they didn't get to play because of COVID.
Well, they had an interesting
like they were warming up.
I would say a mid-year change in coach.
Okay.
And Dan Lange had been also a Vanderbilt.
Yeah, a Vanderbilt guy, yeah.
But circumstances not worth bringing up now. Aaron had to step in and take over the team, and he did lead them to the regional championship. That's right.
Yeah, so they were ready to.
He was actually the golf coach.
Okay.
In Marshall County.
Okay. But, you had some memorable games, as you detail in your book, Buzzer Beaters and Memorial Magic, the game against Tillman. Terry Shumpert, who, was all-state, but ended up with a professional career playing for the Royals.
He had a great baseball.
I mean, he basically followed Frank White. Frank White retired, and Shumpert just moved right on in there. That's the type of talent that you were playing against. Who would you say was the most difficult or the biggest rival back then for Marshall County?
Oh, it was Tillman. There's no doubt.
Tillman for sure. Yeah.
For sure, Tillman. Even though we were not in the same district. So we did play them twice a year, but they were not in the same district. Our district at the time was Callaway County, Murray High, and Mayfield.
Okay.
So we played them 2 times a year, and then another time likely in the district tournament. In fact, in '84 we played Mayfield 5 times and beat them 5 times,
Wow.
which is really crazy.
Yeah.
But Tillman was the rival. We played them 4 times in '84. So we played them in the Christmas tournament, which they had was a tradition for many years. We played them in the finals of that, played them again, and then we played them twice in the regular season, and then met them for the 4th time in the regional tournament at Murray SP. So that's a lot of times to play one team, especially a team as good as Reaper. Shumpert was terrific. Sam Arterburn was a great player as well. They were number 1 in the state for much of the season. And, we had 4 really great games against them in '84, and happily we won the greatest and the last one, the one that really and truly counted.
And that's the one that propelled you guys to Lexington, correct?
It was the semifinal. We had to come back the next night and play Callaway.
Callaway again.
That was the 4th time we played Callaway.
And you had beaten them like almost 30 points.
We routed them in the district final, literally 7 days before, just blew them out. And we hosted, that was at Marshall County. We beat them like 92-57 or something. And I had 42 points. And it was, it's just an absolute rout. And this was a completely different game. I mean, it's hard to beat teams 3 and 4 times in a season. It really is hard.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
most people, and we weren't overconfident, but a lot of people are like, you beat Tillman, well, now you're in the state tournament. And Coach Alan Hatcher, our coach, said, don't talk to my players because we're not. Last I saw, we qualified for the finals of the region. Yeah. We're not in Lexington yet. And it was a nail-biter the entire way and a harrowing ending. But we won by a point, and that is what got us to Lexington.
Yeah, and that's what's great about the book. Your ability to recount those things in such vivid detail is just, it's incredible. And I hope I
had a lot of help. So in 2010, which is 2009, I guess, was the 25th anniversary of that '84 team. We were going to have a big reunion, and it turns out a big ice storm hit about the night we were supposed to do it, so I wasn't able to get out of Atlanta and get up there. I think in Western Kentucky was down for like 2 weeks, I think, there without power for 14 days or something crazy.
Oh, wow.
But, so I wasn't able to make it up there for that. But on that occasion, we were sent a DVD of that game, the Tillman-Marshall County game, with the radio broadcast synced up to it.
Oh, cool.
So I watched it at that time, and that describes, a lot of that is not memory. You being able to watch it, I did a lot, and there were maybe 8 or 10 did that as well. And I explained that kind of like an afterword or something at the tail end of the book, just to set people at ease that I don't have an identical memory. I was aided by DVDs of some of our big wins at Vanderbilt in this one game in '84, along with newspaper clips that would describe, just a capsule of the game in college, and sometimes in high school as well. I had access to that as well. So I was able to piece a lot of those things together to make what I hope is a compelling narrative.
Well, and that gets, you get a lot of eyes on you, even though that's just one. You end up playing, I think, Bourbon County in state and lose. You get a lot of eyes on you. So,
that's true.
Did the recruiters come calling? Obviously, it's different. It's a little bit different process today than it was back then, because it's all about high school back then. Now it's more AAU showcases, tournaments, and summer stuff like that. Did you get more interest in that off season?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, that's another thing about the Kentucky State High School Basketball Tournament. It is a big deal. And because it's only one, as we talked about, just one tournament, there's not a series of classifications or whatever. That's the one chance for recruiters, college coaches, assistant coaches, whomever, to go scout for talent. And so there was a big uptick. We only had the one game, but I had a really good game and the loss to Bourbon County, and that really did seem to escalate interest. Although I was helped because Alan Hatcher, our coach, that was his first year at Marshall County. He had come to Marshall County from West Virginia, where he coincidentally had coached one of the nation's top seniors the year before that, a guy named Mark Klein, who was sort of this Larry Bird-like figure. I mean, he was, they kind of sort of the hick from French Lick,
right,
1983 style. He was 6'8", he was white, he had like this blonde mustache that Bird had at the time. Could do everything supposedly. So Allen had him, and through that he got to know a lot of college coaches because Mark was recruited more heavily, I'm sure, than I was. But he was like in these, you see these All-American teams in '83, which is senior year, and he did well. He went to Wake Forest, and with Muggsy Bogues, they were in the same recruiting class, and they had some good years at Wake Forest. So Mark had a good career as well. But I think Allen was able to meet a lot of college coaches through Klein's recruitment, and that helped him not just with me, but then on down with all these other players that came after me. Like you mentioned, Aaron, there was Dan Hall, and later on there was Terry Birdsong, and there was Mitch Cochran, and then later on there was Dan Lange. So, although Hatcher didn't coach Lange, but there were these connections that were made that really helped, and they helped me, and then it helped a lot of these other players that played at the next level as well that came after me, because Coach Hatcher had a lot of contacts in the college coaching profession.
Well, let me jump in here, Adam, if you don't mind, about this recruiting thing. Barry, I may have misread this or not, but you committed, or you wanted to enjoy your senior season. Is that, and you committed early, right?
You're right.
So, obviously the end game for you, or the ultimate goal, would have been Kentucky, right?
I think it would have been nice. I was not going to hold out for Kentucky. So back in my view, and I think everybody who grew up in that era would probably agree with this, if in the 1980s, it was still important for Kentucky to recruit in state. Now, they had gone national. They had people like Sam Bowie, people like that in the early 80s, that were big. But they also kept a lot of players in state, Dirk Minifield and Mel Turpin and Charles Hurt. Those are the guys in the early 80s. And then you get on into the mid 80s and you have some more people a little like that, but not as many. But it was really important, I think, for Kentucky to try to have some people from Kentucky to play. Now, obviously, Rex Chapman, who was the year after me, was the big goal, and they got Rex the year after I went to Vanderbilt. But if you look at that, the late 80s, a lot of people, and I mentioned this, Richie Farmer held out for Kentucky, John Pelfrey held out for Kentucky, Darren Feldhouse, who went to Kentucky early because his dad had played there. So that was and then Chapman went there. So those were all big. And Mike Scott went to Wake Forest, but transferred. He was the same year
transferred
to Kentucky and finished up at UK. So those are all guys. All those guys were from the eastern part of the state. Not Chapman, he's from Owensboro, but everybody else was far eastern part of the state, closer to Lexington. And they just grew up, thinking their mindset, I think, if you ask them, would be, I've got scholarships in hand. And in fact, with Pelfrey and Farmer, they did, from Vanderbilt at least, because Coach Newton recruited them. I actually hosted Pelfrey on his visit to Vanderbilt. So they, and I remember Feldhouse visiting Vandy. So those were all, they had scholarships in hand, and they were willing to wait it out to see if Kentucky was going to come calling. And it turns out, they did. But I had no interest in that. It wasn't that big a deal to me. I think, I wasn't going to play as much probably at Kentucky as I got to play at Vanderbilt. And as I mentioned in the book, there's no way I regretted that decision. And I would not.
You got to say you ended up in a pretty good spot. You got a great education. Yeah, and what you're doing now is tremendous. So, tip of the hat to Vanderbilt and your choice, I guess.
There's no doubt about it. And it's, it's a lot closer. Nashville's 120 miles, I guess, from where I grew up. Lexington's about twice as long. Even in the States, my parents didn't miss a home game. that I can remember in 4 years. So, you could go down there, you could get back home at night, before the evening got too late. So, all around, it was the best decision. Wearing UK was great, but it was never anything that I was going to hold out for. I wanted to sign early, enjoy my senior year in high school, and then get on with it.
There you go.
Yeah. And a lot of times, I think even Coach Hall, I think, has been quoted as saying, his two biggest regrets were letting you and Phil Cox make it to Vanderbilt.
Well, it was, it's interesting. It's interesting you say that. Now, I can't speak for Phil. We never were teammates. I followed him exactly. He graduated in 85, which was my senior year in high school. So I came immediately after he did. I know Phil did one. Phil is another one of those guys who was in the far eastern part of Kentucky. I mean,
was it Hardin County?
He really did, as far as I've ever known. I never talked to him about it. Really wanted to play for Kentucky. And, they had guys at the time. They had a lot of guards. They had Roger Harden, and they had Jim Master, and they had James Blackman, and they had other guys. It would have been a hard rotation to crack, even if you're as good as Phil Cox was. He was really good. Yeah. So same problem I would have had. You're going to play with Davender, Chapman, Blackman, and these guys. I mean, that's hard. I think there were greater opportunities at Vanderbilt, and it's great if Coach Hall thinks that. I mean, I think he's a good man, and he did some great things at Kentucky. He won a championship. I'm happy how it turned out, though.
Oh, absolutely,
awesome.
Absolutely. As far as and again in the book too, you make mention of and actually Buster only talks about it in the forward. He talks about kind of this knack that you had of hitting the big shot. And one of the ones that I remember, I haven't gotten to your explaining it in the book or going over in the book, was the shot against Georgia at home.
Yeah.
And the thing that stands out to me was I remember watching it, and I think you're down by 2, and you had an open shot, but it was a 2. And you knew, it's like you knew that where that 3-point line was. And I think the Georgia guy, you kind of almost lost the ball a little bit. He went for the steal, and you kind of gathered it and just stepped back and hit the 3 and won it at the buzzer. And that was something always, like when I would watch you play, it just seemed like that your basketball IQ and your court awareness, it almost looked like, and I was telling my dad, we were on a Zoom call with him for my mom's birthday, and I said, "Hey, Dad, who we're interviewing tonight?" He said, "Who?" I said, "Barry Goheen." He goes, "You're kidding me." And I said, "No." And he said, and he goes, "He sure was smooth. He sure did make it look easy. It looked like he wasn't even trying."
I guess I'm a good actor. It wasn't.
Because it was hard, right? You're like, yeah, that was.
It was hard, exactly.
Well, I got to ask you this, Barry. I mean, I was going to say, when your freshman year, there was no 3-point line. Is that correct?
That's true. The 3-point line came into being for across college basketball. Some conferences, the ACC prominently had experimented with it a few years before, but yeah, the 86-87 season was the first year of the 3-point line uniform across college basketball. That's correct.
Yeah. Now, and what was also, and I was reading an article this past week that, I think a lot of times when we look back on the early part of the 3-point, line being brought into college basketball, a lot of people seem to credit Rick Pitino with being the guy that takes advantage of it. But it was really C.M. Newton that was the guy that said, "Look, I'm going to build my team around this. This can change the game." What did he do? What did he say to you guys maybe coming in that 86-87 season? You and Barry are sophomores. I think Droude's a sophomore.
Droude's a freshman.
May's a freshman. Oh, Droude was a freshman. Okay,
Droude's a freshman. Wilcox is a freshman. Booker and I are sophomores. So those 4 guys, and Mays came in the next year, 87 and 88.
Okay.
So that was the bomb squad, the so-called bomb squad, those 5 people. But, what we did, this is interesting, that Coach Newton, before this, like the very first practice on October 15th, which was the magic day back then, it's not anymore, but that's see, everybody, all the players, even Will Purdue and all the big guys, they got behind the 3-point line, and you shot set number of shots. I don't remember what the number was, 20, 50, could have 100. I don't remember. But if you hit, I think 30% of them, then you had the green light to shoot 3-pointers during the game. I mean, that was basically how that was decided. And, the 4 people I mentioned, Wilcox, Stroud, Booker, and me, hit the requisite percentage. So we were able to shoot. And Coach Newton was very forward thinking. I agree. I think in retrospect, Pitino got a lot of credit because Providence went to the Final Four that year.
Yeah.
They kind of shot their way there with Billy Donovan and I think Delray Brooks.
Yeah.
From Indiana. And one other guy, I can't remember his name, but they had like a kind of a 3-headed monster. And they surprised everybody by getting the Final Four, really using the 3-point shot. And I think that's where the Pitino thing came. And then, of course, he took that to Kentucky after he had a couple of years with the Knicks. But but I think that's where he got his pub. You're right. Coach Newton was in international basketball, very involved. He had seen this. He was on the '84 Olympic team, helping Bob Knight win the gold medal. We had played in Taipei, and he had coached another team before that in international for Vanderbilt in '83, '84, maybe somewhere in there. So they'd had a 3-point line for a long time in international play. So he was used to. He was already a little bit acclimated, probably more than most coaches were because of his international experience. And, a lot just complained about it. Like, well, this is crazy. Well, you can complain about it if you want to, but you still need to, but that's the rule. It's not going anywhere.
Right.
And, rather than complain about it, Coach Newton said, well, look, let's make use of it. And it's a great equalizer. I think everybody would agree with that 30 some odd years later. It allows a team like a Providence to beat a Georgetown, which is what they did, to go to the Final Four that year. Georgetown probably was allergic to a 3-point shot in those days because they were so good inside. And the game where we beat Kentucky in '88, we outscored them 39-3 from behind the arc. We hit 13 3-pointers. They hit 1. That was the Chapman team.
Yeah.
So, it really equalizes things. And with a great inside game, we had Purdue, we had Cornette. Those were great players too. So you've got a great inside-outside combination, and just make sure you're behind the line. Nothing is more frustrating when I see it. When I see somebody shoot a 3, hit a 3, but it's ruled a 2. I can never, ever remember that happening to one of our players.
Yeah.
I mean, and if it did, there was going to be – the reason I would remember it is that person, whoever it was, is going to have a strong chewing out by Coach Newton at some point, either during the game or the next day in practice, because you just gave a point to the other team when you did that.
Yeah.
And
worst shot in basketball.
Close games, that can make the difference between winning and losing.
Yeah. Worst shot in basketball.
Now, I think I've read this before. Barry, you may correct me, but I think Coach Newton, you guys practice being down by 3 or even tied, as part of your practice plan. Is that am I saying that correctly?
You're remembering that perfectly. We would have what we called situational practice toward the end of every practice. And it would be different. It was never the same. It could be down 3 with a minute to go. It could be up 5 with a minute and a half. Down 4 with 2 minutes. And let's play it out. How are you going to react? Now, obviously, you can't simulate 15,000 people in Memorial Gym yelling, and you can't simulate the talent that you're playing against. But that's pretty good. Our record, and this was always quoted, and I don't have the stats on me, but it was always quoted that the Vanderbilt's record, or Coach Newton's record, in like close games and overtime games was 100 percentage points or 75 percentage points better than all other games, because we worked on that. You would never want to encounter a situation in a basketball game that you had not tried to simulate in practice. And I don't think we did, unless a tennis ball was involved. So it was really great coaching by Coach Newton to really be able to allow us as a team to simulate these late game situations so we would know how to react in these. And so many teams don't know or didn't even know then how to do it. To me, that's just coaching. That's not, players should know how to play that, but you've got to be able to coach them into that situation so they know how to play. You can't always look at the bench in a late game situation. There's too many things going on. You need to know and have it drilled into you how you're going to react to a situation. So Coach Newton was great at that.
And he went on, I guess, after that, and then he became the AD at Kentucky. And
listen, before you talk about that, now Coach Newton, I mean, he told you guys during the season that he was leaving. Is that correct? Like maybe during the NCAA tournament?
No, it was earlier than that. It was in the sequence was he won. We won a game against Texas. It was a non-conference game stuck in the middle of the conference season. It was like late January, I think, of my senior year, which was '89. So that was his 500th win. So it was a huge deal. The game was on CBS, which was a big deal back then.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that was on Saturday afternoon. Monday afternoon, after practice, he comes in and says he's resigning effective the end of the season to take the AD's job at Kentucky. So just a monumental shock to the players. I think to the fans, it was a huge, just a huge thing to happen in the middle of the season. So it happened in late January.
Okay.
So we played out. I guess we probably had 6 weeks, maybe 7. I guess we went to the NCAA. So maybe 7 more weeks where he was our coach. And, as soon as the season ended, he was going to go to UK.
Right.
Which he did.
And that, that transition, like your group, like what you did, I think he had like 2 losing seasons or maybe a 500 season coming in. Maybe your freshman, y'all were 500, I think, maybe. Or
I think we were 13 and 15 my freshman year. Our sophomore year, we went to the NIT quarterfinals.
Okay, so it was really like, there's got to be so much pride for you to look back on that and say, look, we changed Vanderbilt basketball because even after you left, and I think Eddie Fogler came in,
did a great job.
They took off, man. They were the class of the league. They got, McCaffrey, the kid from Duke, and they had Ronnie McMahon. And, I remember going to Memorial and watching the Kentucky game because I couldn't watch it on TV because they were blacked out because they were on probation. And it was so packed I couldn't get a ticket. So my buddy and I ended up watching the game from the parking lot through the back window of a news van that had a monitor in the back. And I think they beat, I want to say that Kentucky committed 44 fouls that game. And I think Vanderbilt shot 46 free throws or something like that. It was
at that game.
Because they press all the time. And I think 5 guys foul out or something like that.
I was at that game. I remember that game.
Well. It was crazy, but that place went nuts. At least from what I could tell from the news band.
But on your point, when I was a senior in high school, which was 84, 85, Vandy lost 11 conference games in a row. They were 4-14 overall, dead last in the SEC. So that's Booker and Cornette and I came in, and Purdue came off a redshirt year. He didn't play in 84, 85, so he was a redshirt sophomore in 86 as we were freshmen. 3 of us were freshmen. So, 3 years later, we're in the Sweet 16, the 4 of us, having come in relatively – we were new. Purdue was a freshman in 84, didn't play much at all. I think he played like 60 minutes or something during the whole season.
Yeah, wow.
Then set out the next year, the redshirt, and then backed up Brett Burrow, but played well, I thought. And then Burrow graduated in 86, so Purdue stepped in 86, 87. So the 4 of us took a great deal of pride, and then Purdue graduated in 88. Then we come within a game of winning the title with Cornette, Booker, and I are seniors in 89. So, yes, you're right. It's very much a point of pride for us that Vandy was dead last in the SEC. The year before we came, we got within in SEC outright. Or at least time for the SEC when we were seniors, which was just 4 years later. So, yes.
Yeah, I think y'all were – y'all were like I think y'all were 12-6, and what Florida was like 13-5. So just one game out.
2 overtime losses to Florida.
Right.
Just
that was the tennis ball game, right?
It was a tennis ball game.
Yeah.
And then an overtime loss down there as well.
All right, you're going to have to help me out because I don't remember the tennis ball game.
Oh,
I'd
come
rather
on.
not, but okay.
I don't.
Dwayne Shinsis?
Shinsis?
Yes.
What, somebody throw it and they gave him a tech or something?
They gave the fan the tech. Go ahead, Barry.
Remember my sequence I just told you about. So the 500th win was on Saturday.
That's right.
Right.
Coach Newton resigns on Monday. The very next game for at Florida on Wednesday in Memorial. So we're playing Florida. And 48 hours earlier, we just had essentially lost our coach. I mean, we hadn't technically, but he was a lame duck for all practical purposes. He's leaving the program to go to Kentucky. So devastating. And we've somehow got to regroup and play a very good Florida team. You know, they had gone to the Sweet 16, I think, the previous couple of years. And Shinsis was there as well. He's really a good player, 7'2", 260.
Oh, yeah, he's a big boy.
In the offseason, Shinsis had gotten into an on-campus brawl with some frat guys, and he had brandished a tennis racket against them. So he got suspended for the first 2 or 3 games of the season. And so they go – this is still relatively early in the SEC season. I think we're maybe 4-2 or something like that. We're about a third of the way through the season, SEC season. They had struggled, and everywhere they'd gone, which is only maybe 2, maybe 3 road games up to that point in the league, tennis balls had been thrown at Shinsis. You know, they already played at UT, and they threw orange tennis balls at him. They played at, and they played at Ole Miss, I think, and somebody hit him in the ankle with one, maybe. So this is not a new occurrence. This is what was going on.
Yeah.
Oh,
he was an unlikable guy anyway because he's so big. He had a mullet. He had a big mouth. He was always shooting it off. He had Purdue gotten into it the year before. So it was just really all the makings were there for something to happen, unfortunately. So we make an incredible comeback in the game. We're down late in the game, and I get a 4-point play that puts us up by 1, 3 and a foul, and hit the free throw. We're up 1 now. We get a steal. We miss a 1-and-1. So they're coming down with 10 seconds or so to go. They miss again. Cornette gets the rebound. He's fouled. He hits the first, so we're up 2 with like 6 seconds to go. But he misses the second free throw. They get the rebound. They try to get a quick shot off, and they airmail Shinsis. It goes out of bounds, and looks like the game's over, and tennis balls start coming onto the floor. Actually, there was 1 second still on the scoreboard clock.
Right.
Didn't now. The referee, Clockerty, called a technical foul. Shinsis himself, and I've never seen a 7'2" guy be the one to shoot technical free throws in my entire – it's still happening 30 years later. He shot and made both technical foul shots to send the game into overtime where they beat us.
Now, Barry, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of people put the blame on the clock keeper for that whole debacle.
I do. I blame everybody. I blame everybody, including us. So to be fair, so you're right. I do blame the clock keeper. This is home. This is a home game. Just let the clock run out. Just let it go to 0, and who cares? If the worst thing that happens is they bring everybody back out, 1 second to go, our ball, and there shouldn't be a technical if all zeros are showing on the clock. So I blame him. I think I blame the referee, Clockerty. Should not have called a technical foul. Coach Newton went to, I think he went to the grave a couple of years ago believing that as well.
Yeah.
At the same time, Booker missed a 1-and-1 with 20 seconds to go. Cornette missed the back end of a 1-and-1.
Right.
We just make one of those shots, we're up 3. And 2 foul shots are not going to hurt us.
Not going to make a
difference. We're still going to win by 1. So, we're not blameless, but it was a very crushing loss, to be sure. We shouldn't have lost the game. It was unfortunate. And, when you lose a game to that team, and when you lose the conference, I should say, to that team by 1 point or 1 game in the standings,
Well, listen,
it's hard to deal.
Yeah. Now, real quick, I got to tell you, I all the game-winning shots, all the half-court stuff you've got, the greatest memory in person was December 5th against North Carolina, I think in '87. I actually stormed the floor.
You were all right.
I was part of the crew out there. And who knows, man? I probably bumped into you or something. But
I hope so.
that that's a game that has stuck with me for, ever. And just to see that happen was an amazing feat. I don't know if you want to reflect on any of that real quick.
I thought, honestly, Paul, I thought that was the game where I felt like we had arrived as a program. Now, the year before, we had beaten Indiana,
right,
which went on to win the national championship.
Yeah, right.
And that was a great win. It was Alford and a lot of great players on that team. And you beat you beat the future national championships. I mean, that is a true feather in your cap. But we were inconsistent that year, and it took a great game to beat Indiana. I thought when we beat North Carolina, we didn't play that well. They were the number one ranked team, and we had, something like 20 turnovers or a lot of turnovers. Didn't shoot it that well from the line, I don't believe. It was a great win. But after the game, I remember after Indiana, we felt like, wow, we were just ecstatic. What a great win. After North Carolina, we were very happy, but it was more the reaction of the team that expected to win as opposed to Indiana a year before that we are surprised maybe that we had won that one. We weren't surprised we beat North Carolina as good as they were. We played an imperfect game and still beat them. So I took away from that the feeling that I think we can be pretty good. It didn't take a perfect game to beat a really, really good team. So I think we're going to win some games this year. And we did. And that's, we went on to the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
That was a great year. But let me get your perspective on this. Coming from Marshall County, playing there where, the high school games were packed. It was an event. And as you mentioned in your book, that gym, is one of the top places to see a high school basketball game in the country. And it is well renowned. They have, big time tournaments there. And then coming to Memorial Gym where you're like, what in the world is this setup? Did it take you a while to get used to that environment with the floor raised and the benches on either end and was that something that it took a little bit of time? Uh-oh.
Game, which no, not really, because by the time we played our first real game in Memorial, which coincidentally was Duke, the year first year they'd gone to the Final Four, went to the Final Four under Coach K with Johnny Dawkins and Billis and Amaker and those guys.
Oh yeah,
amazing team. But we'd practiced there for 2 months or however long it was, and no, I didn't. To me, it wasn't an adjustment at all. I didn't faze me, and as far as the crowd goes, it could get really. If you have 5,500 people in a packed gym, that's probably louder than 15,000 people in a larger space. Even though the acoustics at Memorial make it seem louder, which is great.
Yeah.
Really loud players often. So, but it was no adjustment at all. The adjustment was when you go to Ole Miss or Mississippi State and there's like 4,000 people in a 12,000 seat arena. Now, that's hard. It's hard to get up for those games because you're used to playing before packed gymnasiums, and you go into this dull area and doesn't seem like the gym's well lit, and there's no energy coming from the crowd. Even booing's fine. At least people are caring in one way or the other. But those games are hard to get up for. You got to play State or Ole Miss, and these places just aren't. They're no fun to play at all. So, those are the ones that I always had much harder time getting up for.
What was your favorite place to play? Your favorite venue on the road, or that you played? Maybe not necessarily in conference, but favorite place that you went to and played.
We played some great places. We played at Cameron. We played at Duke. We played at Indiana, which was Assembly Hall. We played at the Palestra, and where I hit a last-second shot to beat Penn. The 3 days after we beat Indiana when I was a sophomore. We played at the Dean Dome. That wasn't a pleasant experience, but it's quite a venue. We played at some really terrific places. I only got to play there one time, but I like Stokely. their last year, I'm sorry, 2 years. We played there my freshman and sophomore year. And they opened Thompson Bowling when I was a junior. But I thought Stokely was a terrific gym, really a cool setup.
Yeah,
That was a nice place to play.
Yeah, and I've been to.
There's some good venues in the league. They're better. They've obviously done this now, but there's a lot of other good places in the league. I never played well at Alabama, but I like Coleman Coliseum. I mean, it seats about the same as Memorial, 15,000. It's a good environment. Wimp Sanderson had them playing well in the 80s, so that place was full a lot of the times that we played there, and I thought that was a really good place to play.
All right. Let me ask you this. Barry, you'd mentioned that you guys had lost to Indiana, who was the eventual national. You actually also lost to Kansas in the tournament. I believe, didn't they end up winning the tournament as well?
No, we beat Indiana, but we
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right.
We lost them the next year.
Yeah.
Right after we beat Carolina, that was our next game was Indiana. We lost by a point up there in Assembly. But no, all 4 years we played a team that was in the national championship game.
Okay.
So I just mentioned Duke. When we were
Right.
fresh, they lost to Louisville that year. But we also played another Final Four team that year, which was LSU, which surprisingly made the Final Four in '86.
Right.
Beat Indiana in '87. Lost to Kansas in '88. And our very next regular season game was in Maui, and it was Michigan. And they won in '89. So we actually played, by sheer coincidence, back-to-back national championships in those seasons. It's just really weird.
Well, the good news is you got to play them in Hawaii.
Right.
Nobody cared, but you and but the consolation, you got to play Chaminade, I bet, right?
We lost to Michigan badly, played Chaminade after that. Yeah.
There you go.
We played we went to Hawaii twice. We won it the first time when we were sophomores. We won the Maui Classic, and Will was the MVP. That was kind of his coming out party, actually.
Gotcha.
When we won that.
Well,
my last question, Adam. I don't
go for it.
Are we wrapping this up?
I think we should. I don't want to take up Barry's entire evening. He just got to the beach. He wants to be able to enjoy that. So, what you got? I got one more question for him that's kind of non-basketball related. But go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I got all the time.
What you got, Brees? Uh-oh. Come on now.
Ask any question you.
My last question to you, Barry. Didn't you have Chicago Bulls after you had left Vanderbilt, correct? Okay. And I think I'd read that, you weren't built for full-time basketball. It was just not in your blood you like to play the game, but you were happy doing whatever. Or
That's a very good way to put it. As a matter of fact, I wish I'd have put it that way in the book. I did say that. The way I looked at it was it was never going to get any better than it got at Vanderbilt,
right?
And or in high school, continuing from that. So I did try out, didn't make the cut, and had offers to go overseas or maybe to try out with other NBA teams in camp, and just wasn't interested.
Yeah.
And I've never really second guessed that decision either.
Well, you're still a legend in my eyes, Barry.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Definitely. And the work that you do with the Atlanta Tip-Off Club is great. That still keeps you in the basketball community, keeps you involved with basketball, which I know you love. Heck, you're from Kentucky, you're from Marshall County. And, I don't know if there's anybody in that county that doesn't love basketball. So it's in our blood, there's another thing too that's unique to Marshall County. And this is my question. This is my non-basketball question. It's kind of a follow-up. I want to know how many times you've been to Tater Day. Uh-oh, I think we're frozen here. So I know it happens. It's in Benton, I believe. But how many times have you been to Tater Day?
I coached with Steve Reese a long time ago at Goodpasture High School. So, I've always had some connections with Vandy. And
I texted with Steve today, as a matter of fact.
Is that right?
He's doing well.
And his daughters had I say they got their moms athletic. They were really good.
Yeah, they both. true. Well, one of them now lives in Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
In Sandy
Okay.
Springs, not very far from where I live.
Okay.
Well, there you are, Adam.
Well,
You're back.
Barry, okay, I'm back. I guess I faded out there for a second, but Barry, I don't know if you heard my question or not. I just want to know, how many times have you been to Tater Day?
More than I can count. It's certainly it's in double figures for sure.
It would have to be, right? It would have to be.
It would have to be.
Yeah.
Well, after we in '84, we were like to put the team on a float to be in.
Oh yeah. Oh,
because after we went
that's
to the
huge.
state, that required a special, float. And then the girls team won the state that year, so we were on floats. So that was the in Tater Day. Gone to Tater Day a lot for sure.
Yeah. And what's crazy is my buddy Dax was kind of educating me on Tater Day, and I, because even though I was from McCracken County, I had never heard of it because I moved from there when I was about third grade. He said, "Oh yeah," he said, "it's huge. It's the oldest running festival in the country." So he educated me on that. So I figured you had been a part of that many, many times. So. Well, guys, Paul, again, and Barry, we're so appreciative of you coming on the show tonight and just expanding on what's in the book for everybody that's listening.
I'm
Keep listening here.
Yeah. Hey, it's not me, it's you, right?
It must be me, I guess. My
my
Paulding County internet connection out here. But guys, while it's back, again, all of our listeners, if you love basketball, get a copy of Buzzer Beaters Memorial Magic by Barry Goheen. It's available on Amazon to pick up.
Do you have any thoughts about
Yeah, I'm skeptical baseball is going to happen. I'm skeptical football will happen on time. I'm interested to see what the NBA does in the bubble here. I'm skeptical. It's sad. It's very unfortunate. March Madness had to go by the wayside. I can only imagine if I were a senior in college and I got the chance to play, or I qualified.
Yeah.
My team qualified for the NCAA tournament and I didn't play in it. That would be really, really crushing to me. So I really feel for a lot of the players that made it or had their teams win their conference tournament or were going to, qualify as an at-large and not be able to play. It really is heartbreaking, I know, and that's so difficult. For the pros, you hate for them to miss seasons, but there'll be, there's next season for them.
Right.
And it's just different when it's in college. You only get those chances don't come along for many people very often. I was one of the lucky ones. But to have that one chance you may have, one shining moment, as they say.
That's right.
Yes, it's
right.
hard hard to have to miss it. Through no fault of your own. Very hard.
Yeah. Well, Barry,
I hope we have it in 2020.
Yeah. Well, Barry, thank you so much for joining us, and for everybody that's listening. Again, get Barry's book. It's on Amazon, Buzzer Beaters and Memorial Magic by Barry Goheen. It's a great read for basketball fans and even non-basketball fans alike. It's great. I know I've really enjoyed reading, and I look to finish it up here shortly. But follow us on Twitter at Thru Sports. That's DTHRU Sports, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Thru Sports.
Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
All right, Barry. We thank you so much, and
thanks, Barry.
For Paul Brees in Brentwood, Tennessee, and Barry Goheen in Hilton Head, South Carolina, I'm Adam Friedman. You've been listening to and watching Thru Sports with Adam and Paul.